All right, let's do this. We're heading up to the International Space Station today. See what's going on with Expedition 72.
Sounds fun.
They're kicking off the year with a lot on their plates, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. All from this article I read. It's called Lettuce, Jetpacks, and Spacewalks, New Year on the Space Station.
Catchy.
Super catchy. And the title, honestly, barely scratches the surface.
Wow.
So many things are happening up there right now. Like, they've got upcoming spacewalks. They've got all the usual science research going on. Astronauts tending to, space lettuce.
Right.
Cosmonauts managing all the cargo. It's like this little microcosm of, like, all human endeavor 250 miles above us. Wild.
It kind of makes you realize, doesn't it? Like the ISS, it's not just some science lab floating up there. It's, I don't know, it's proof that we can work together. We can be creative.
Yeah.
And keep going, even when things are super tough.
Yeah, definitely. I have to admit, like, the thought of an astronaut, like, tending their garden in space while also getting ready for a spacewalk, that's wild.
Right.
Speaking of spacewalks, the article said they're key to maintaining all those science instruments. That's got to be important, right?
Totally. And it goes beyond just, routine maintenance. There's the nicer X-ray telescope up there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that thing is helping us learn about, like, neutron stars.
Cool.
They're so dense, right?
Yeah.
Like, a teaspoon of neutron star, if you brought it down to Earth, it would weigh billions of tons.
Okay. That is mind-blowing. So what has this nicer telescope told us about these, like, crazy heavy neutron stars?
Well, one cool thing is some of them have, like, mountains on the surface.
Mountains? What?
Really?
But, I mean, not like mountains we'd see on Earth. They're only millimeters high.
Oh.
But because the star is so incredibly dense, the gravity around these little mountains is immense.
So tiny mountains, but with a huge gravitational pull.
Exactly. Wow.
And it just goes to show, studying these extreme places out in space can change how we think about physics. We find stuff out there we wouldn't even dream of down here.
Totally. It's like the universe is always reminding us, like, hey, you don't know everything yet.
Right.
That's so cool. And the spacewalks they're key for keeping those instruments working. So we can keep, learning all this cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, the article focused on these 4 NASA astronauts getting ready for a spacewalk. There's Commander Suni Williams and flight engineers Nick Hague, Don Pettit, and Butch Wilmore stepping out into space, like a vacuum. It's got to be nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah. Big time. That's why astronaut training is so intense.
Right.
It's not just knowing how to fix things. It's being able to stay calm and focused, even when you're in a high-pressure situation with, Earth literally below you.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. The article also said they're practicing with jetpacks, which is that normal for spaceflight?
Yeah. Not standard equipment, but it's a crucial safety thing. Think about it. If you came untethered from the station during a spacewalk.
Oh.
Yeah. It sounds scary, right? But those jetpacks would let you fly back to safety, like a little escape pod built into your suit.
Okay, that's both terrifying and, like, awesome. Good to know they have a backup, though. Has that ever happened? Like an astronaut getting untethered?
Super rare, luckily.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's even possible, just highlights how risky space exploration is and how you always got to be prepared for anything.
Yeah. Big reminder that space is amazing, but it's also dangerous.
For sure. And that brings us to this other part of the mission. Might not be as glamorous, but super important. Managing all the stuff they need to keep the station running. The article specifically mentioned 3 cosmonauts handling a lot of this stuff.
Okay, so we got astronauts getting ready for spacewalks, super advanced telescopes looking into deep space, and someone's got to make sure the space station has snacks.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And it's more than just snacks. You got to think, the ISS, it's like a tiny city in space.
Yeah.
Right? It needs everything. Food, water, air, spare parts, tools, all this stuff for experiments and maintenance. And keeping track of all that stuff. When everything's floating around in microgravity.
Yeah.
That can't be easy.
You're telling me I lose stuff in my own apartment all the time. It makes you think, those cosmonauts must be super organized. Like, can you imagine the inventory spreadsheet for a space station?
Oh, I bet it's mind-boggling. And it's not just about being organized. They also got to handle the arrival of all the cargo from resupply mission. The article mentioned the Progress 90 resupply ship.
Yeah.
It just docked with the ISS, brought all kinds of essential stuff.
It's like a space delivery service. I never really thought about how they keep a space station stocked up. It makes you realize how much work goes on, like, behind the scenes just to make these missions happen.
For sure. And it shows how collaborative the ISS is. Astronauts, cosmonauts from all different countries all working together, each one with their own crucial job.
And speaking of different countries, the article mentioned this cosmonaut, Alexander Gorbanov, documenting like microorganisms growing in space. Is that important? Like, why are they looking at that?
Might seem small, but studying how life adapts to microgravity, it's huge for understanding what happens to living things in space, like the long-term effects.
Right, right.
And it's not just about astronauts either. What we learn from these experiments, it helps us understand how life might evolve in other places.
Yeah.
Maybe even on other planets.
So these tiny microorganisms could help us figure out if there's life beyond Earth.
Wow, that's amazing. And the article also talked about Don Pettit. He was tending seedlings of Red Romaine lettuce. Space agriculture, I know it's a big deal, but why lettuce?
Well, for one thing, it's pretty easy to grow, and it grows fast.
Okay.
But more importantly, it's about getting ready for really long space missions.
Like if we ever want to send people to Mars or farther, we need to figure out how to grow food in space. Exactly. Imagine, like future Mars colonists, eating fresh produce grown right there on the red planet. That's the kind of future these experiments are leading to.
Wow, a Martian salad. Never thought I'd say that. That really puts things in perspective. It's not just a salad in space. It's about being able to live in space long term, being self-sufficient. Makes you wonder, what other crops are they experimenting with up there?
Well, they've tried other leafy greens, radishes, even peppers. Every time they succeed, we're one step closer to a fully sustainable system for growing food in space.
So even though the spacewalks and fancy telescopes get all the attention, these more basic things like growing lettuce and managing cargo, they're actually just as important for the future of space exploration. It's all connected, isn't it?
Completely. Every task, experiment, every discovery adds to the bigger picture of humans exploring space and understanding the universe.
It just shows you, space exploration, it's a team effort. With contributions from every part of the station, every country involved, makes you think, the ISS, it's more than just a cool piece of technology. It's a symbol of humans working together on a global scale. But before we get too philosophical here, let's get back to the mission itself. The article mentioned the cosmonauts have another big job, managing the cargo from the recent resupply mission.
Oh, yeah. That's where things get interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, you see, the Progress 90, it didn't just bring food and supplies.
Oh.
It also brought new equipment and materials for future experiments.
So the cosmonauts are basically unpacking a giant space care package. What kind of cool stuff did they get?
This article didn't get into specifics, but it probably includes stuff like tools for the upcoming spacewalks, parts to upgrade the existing experiments, maybe even supplies for brand new research projects.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. Can't wait to hear what they do with all that new stuff. But hold on, if they're already unpacking a new shipment, what happens to the old equipment? Does it just stay up there cluttering up the station?
That's a great question, and that leads to another fascinating aspect of life up there. Space garbage.
Okay, space garbage. I have to admit, I never really thought about that. What do they do with all the trash?
Well, some stuff they can recycle or reuse, but a lot of it has to be thrown away.
Yeah, makes sense.
And this is where the Progress spacecraft comes in again.
Wait, so the same spacecraft that delivers the new stuff also hauls away the trash?
Exactly. It's like a two-way system. So once the Progress has dropped off its cargo and they load it up with all the waste, it detaches from the station. And then it burns up in the atmosphere, makes sure the station doesn't turn into a giant space landfill.
Wow, that is amazing. It's like a completely self-contained little world up there, even down to the trash removal. It just makes you realize they have to think about every little detail in space, huh?
Precisely. And it shows how the ISS is like a blueprint for future missions.
Yeah.
For when we want to stay in space for a long time, or even set up settlements on other planets.
So from tending lettuce to dealing with space garbage, it's clear that living on the ISS it's complex, it's science and engineering and a whole lot of creativity and resourcefulness. Pretty inspiring, really. But before we get too carried away, there's another thing that's key to the ISS's success. International cooperation.
Right, and that's a whole story in itself.
I can't wait to dive into that. Okay, so we're back, ready to explore this whole idea of the International Space Station, like being this big collaborative project.
Yeah, definitely.
It's easy to get caught up in all that like cool science and the technology. But the ISS wouldn't even be up there without a whole lot of teamwork, right? Like international teamwork.
Absolutely. I mean, the ISS, it really shows what we can do when we put aside our differences and focus on a shared goal. It's a global thing, truly global, 5 major space agencies working together. NASA, Roscosmos, ESA, JXA, and the Canadian Space Agency.
5 agencies, wow. So each one, brings something different to the table. It's not just about splitting the cost, right?
No, definitely not. Each agency, they have their own special skills, their own resources.
Yep.
So, for example, the U.S. modules, they're focused on living space and research. The Russian modules, they handle things like propulsion, keeping the station moving, and life support. Then you have the European and Japanese modules. They've got those specialized labs. And Canada, they built the Canadarm too.
Oh, yeah. That robotic arm.
Right. Essential for building and fixing stuff on the station.
So it's like a giant space jigsaw puzzle with each piece coming from a different part of the world. It's mind-blowing how they coordinated all that, especially back in the 90s when they started building it.
Oh, it was a huge, huge project, technically and, politically. Coordinating the designs, building all those modules in different countries, launching them all up there, and all while dealing with international politics.
Yeah.
It really shows the vision and dedication of everyone involved.
I've always just kind of thought of the ISS as it's just always been up there. But when you think about the history, all that collaboration, and just how ambitious the whole thing was, it's pretty humbling.
Totally agree. And it's not just history. The ISS is still a shining example of what international cooperation can look like, especially these days when working together globally is more important than ever.
Definitely. So how does it actually work with all these partners involved? Who makes decisions? Who's the boss up there?
Well, there isn't one single boss on the ISS. Each agency, they have their own control center here on Earth, and they all talk to each other constantly, coordinate activities, make decisions together, kind of like a big international meeting, but with a way better view.
Haha. Yeah, I can imagine. Makes sense, though, with so much at stake. But let's get back to the current mission. We were talking about the cosmonauts managing the cargo from the Progress resupply ship. Is that a purely Russian thing, or are other agencies involved there too?
It's a team effort. So the Progress spacecraft itself, it's Russian. But the cargo inside, it often includes supplies and equipment from all the other agencies.
Ah, so it's like a global care package delivered by Russia's space truck.
Haha, exactly. What kind of things are they getting from the other countries, you ask?
Yeah, I am.
Well, it could be anything, really. Scientific instruments, experiments, maybe spare parts for the life support system. Remember, each agency, they contribute different parts to the ISS, so they got to work together to keep everything running.
Right, like a giant international swap meetup in space. It makes you wonder, with all those different cultures and languages, how do they all communicate up there? Do they all have to learn each other's languages?
Well, the official languages on the ISS are English and Russian.
Makes sense.
And most of the astronauts and cosmonauts, they know at least a little bit of both.
I bet there are some funny moments, though, with all the different cultures, like food preferences or even just different senses of humor.
Oh, definitely. There are all sorts of stories about astronauts trying each other's food, sharing traditions, just finding ways to connect, even though they come from different backgrounds. It really shows how adaptable humans are,
Yeah.
We can find common ground, even in the craziest situations.
Yeah. Sounds like living on the ISS is like a masterclass in international relations and cross-cultural communication. What an experience. So besides the collaboration, the cargo management, what other parts of the mission show this international teamwork?
Well, the research they're doing up there is a great example. Scientists from all over the world, they're working together on experiments, sharing data, sharing their expertise, all to learn more about everything, from the human body to the mysteries of the universe.
So it's not just about keeping the station running. It's about using it to make scientific discoveries as a global team. That's amazing.
It really is. And it shows how powerful science can be. It goes beyond borders, brings people together. The ISS, it's a reminder that we're all part of the same human family. We share the same planet, And we all have this desire to explore and understand the universe.
Well said. So with all this international collaboration, what are some of the biggest achievements of the ISS program so far?
Well, besides being the largest thing humans have ever built in space, the ISS has contributed to tons of scientific breakthroughs. Research up there has led to new treatments for osteoporosis, better ways to purify water, and we understand more about how the human body reacts to being in space for a long time.
Wow.
And those are just a few examples of the real benefits that have come from this international collaboration.
So the research they're doing hundreds of miles above Earth is actually helping people down here. That's incredible. Talk about a return on investment for space exploration.
Exactly. It reminds us that space exploration isn't just about pushing the limits of what we know. It's about making life better here on Earth, too.
Speaking of pushing limits, the spacewalk's coming up. The ones mentioned in the article, they're a great example of that. Can you tell us more about what those astronauts will be doing out there?
Oh, definitely. Remember the nicer X-ray telescope?
Yeah, the one studying neutron stars.
Right. Well, part of these spacewalks is all about servicing that instrument.
Oh, okay.
They're going to install this special patch to protect it from sunlight. Stray sunlight can mess with its observations of those neutron stars.
Wow, that sounds incredibly precise. Imagine having to do that kind of delicate work, wearing a bulky spacesuit with Earth spinning below you. I get nervous changing a light bulb.
Ha. It takes incredible skill and training.
Yeah.
These astronauts, they trained for years to handle these complex procedures, especially in such a challenging environment. And it's not just about the technical stuff. They have to stay calm under pressure. It's basically like doing open-heart surgery on $1 million telescope while floating in space.
Okay, that's an image I won't soon forget. What about the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, the other instrument you mentioned? Any upgrades planned for that one?
Yes. The article mentioned the astronauts are going to be prepping it for upgrades.
Excellent.
Sounds like there's a whole series of spacewalks dedicated to making it even better. And remember, this instrument, it's a particle detector. It's searching for evidence of dark matter and antimatter, some of the most mysterious stuff in the universe.
So these upgrades could potentially lead to, like, groundbreaking discoveries about, the fundamental nature of the universe.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about these missions. The ISS, it's not just about doing experiments today, it's an investment in the future of science. We're learning things up there that could completely change how we understand physics, astronomy, even life itself.
That's an incredible thought. It makes you wonder what other research is going on up there that could have a huge impact on our future.
Well, there's a lot of focus on human health and, how our bodies work in space. For instance, they're studying how microgravity affects bone density, muscle mass, even the heart and blood vessels. This research is key to understanding what happens to the human body during long space flights and how to counteract those effects.
Right, because if we ever want to send people to Mars or beyond, we need to make sure they're healthy when they get there and that they can, handle gravity again after being in space for so long.
Exactly. And it's not just the physical challenges. They're also studying the psychological effects of long-duration spaceflight. Imagine being stuck in a relatively small space with the same people for months or even years. It takes a special kind of person to handle that kind of isolation.
Yeah, I can imagine cabin fever gets a whole new meaning in space. So they're studying how to keep astronauts mentally healthy as well as physically healthy.
Absolutely. They're looking at team dynamics, how to manage stress, and even the impact of being in space on sleep and mood.
Wow, it seems like they're really thinking of everything up there. It's amazing to think that something as basic as getting a good night's sleep can be a challenge in space.
It just shows you space exploration is about so much more than just rockets and robots. It's about understanding what humans are capable of, pushing those limits. And it's about taking care of the most important thing we send up there, the people.
That's beautifully said. It's a good reminder that behind all the technology and the science, there are real people up there, facing real challenges, making incredible sacrifices to explore and expand our knowledge.
Exactly. And their work, it's paving the way for future generations to go even further. Maybe one day we'll have settlements on other planets.
Yeah.
Humans could become a multiplanetary species.
That's a future I'd love to see. But let's bring it back to the present for a moment. The article also mentioned the cosmonauts are busy documenting the growth of microorganisms in space. Can you tell us a little more about that research?
Of course. Remember Alexander Gorbanov, the cosmonaut we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, he's been taking pictures of these tiny organisms, watching them grow and adapt to being in microgravity.
So they're literally watching bacteria grow in space. Why is that so important?
Well, think of these microorganisms as like tiny astronauts themselves.
Yeah.
By seeing how they change and adapt to spaceflight, we can learn a lot about how microgravity affects all living things. This research can help us figure out how life might exist in other environments and even lead to new technologies here on Earth.
So a tiny microbe could hold the key to unlocking big secrets about life beyond Earth. That's amazing. It shows you how every experiment, no matter how small, can be important to the bigger picture of space exploration.
Exactly. And speaking of the bigger picture, we need to talk about the space lettuce again.
Oh, right. Don Pettit and his space garden. Why is growing lettuce in space such a big deal?
Remember, it's about sustainability, being able to take care of ourselves. For long missions in space, and maybe even for future settlements on other planets, we need to figure out how to grow food. This experiment with red romaine lettuce, it's helping scientists understand how plants adapt to microgravity and how we can make them grow better in those conditions.
So it's not just about having a salad in space, it's about being able to live in space long term.
Right. It's a small step, but a crucial one, toward being able to live sustainably in space. Imagine, one day, astronauts harvesting fresh food from gardens on Mars. It's an incredible possibility.
Wow, it really is. It makes you appreciate how these experiments on the ISS, they might seem simple, but they can have huge implications for the future. While we're looking ahead, what's next for the International Space Station? What does the future hold?
Well, right now, the ISS is supposed to operate until 2030. But there are talks about extending it even longer. And beyond that, there are plans for new space stations, maybe in low Earth orbit or even orbiting the moon.
So the age of space stations is far from over. It sounds like we're just getting started.
Absolutely. And with private companies getting more involved in space, we can expect even more innovation, even more exciting developments in the coming years.
It's definitely a thrilling time to be following all this space exploration, that's for sure. But let's come back to the present for a moment. The article mentioned the cosmonauts were busy with a lot of different tasks. Can you give us some more details?
Sure. Remember those microorganisms Alexander Gorbanov was photographing?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of a bigger study to understand how life changes in microgravity. They're watching how these organisms behave in space to learn more about how spaceflight affects all living things.
It's amazing how much we can learn about life on Earth by studying it in such a, extreme environment.
It is. And then you have Ivan Wagner. He's been diligently moving all that cargo from the Progress resupply ship. These resupply missions are vital to keeping the ISS running.
Yeah.
They bring everything: food, water, scientific equipment, spare parts, you name it.
It's like a lifeline from Earth, making sure the astronauts have everything they need to live and work in space.
Exactly. And last but not least, there's Alexei Ovchinin. He's been carefully taking inventory in all the different modules.
Okay.
Might seem kind of boring, but keeping track of everything is super important when you're living and working in a small space. Especially when everything is floating around, it takes a lot of focus and patience.
Yeah, it sounds like the cosmonauts have their hands full keeping everything organized and running smoothly. It really highlights how many different jobs are necessary to keep a space station operational.
Definitely a team effort, with everyone using their skills to keep this amazing orbiting laboratory working. It's really a testament to human ingenuity and our ability to collaborate.
It's inspiring to see what we can accomplish when we work together toward a common goal. Now, let's dive a bit deeper into this international collaboration. You mentioned the partnership between NASA and Roscosmos, but what are some other examples of international cooperation on the ISS?
Like I said before, the ISS is a truly global project. 5 space agencies are involved: NASA, Roscosmos, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency. They all contribute modules, resources, and expertise, making the ISS a place where the whole world can work together to make scientific discoveries.
It's amazing, a truly remarkable feat of engineering and diplomacy, bringing so many countries together to achieve a common goal in space.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it shows how powerful science and exploration can be. They can go beyond politics and borders. The ISS is a symbol of hope, showing what humanity can achieve when we put aside our differences and work towards a shared vision.
It's a powerful message, especially in today's world. Now, more than ever, we need to remember the importance of international cooperation. And speaking of shared visions, what are some of the big goals that unite all these different space agencies?
At its heart, the ISS is all about scientific research. It's a one-of-a-kind lab where scientists can do experiments in microgravity, something you can't do here on Earth.
Right.
And this research, it covers a wide range of fields, from biology and medicine to physics and material science.
So it's not just about learning about space itself, it's about using space to learn more about our own planet and ourselves?
Exactly. For example, research on the ISS has led to new ways to treat osteoporosis, better water purification systems, and a better understanding of how the human body adapts to long-duration spaceflight. Just a few examples of the benefits that have come from this collaboration.
Wow, it's incredible to think that research done hundreds of miles above us can have such a direct impact on our lives here on Earth. It shows that space exploration isn't just about exploring the unknown, it's also about improving life here at home.
Couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
It's about expanding our knowledge, pushing the limits of what humans can do, and then using that knowledge to benefit everyone. The International Space Station, it really is a perfect example of what we can achieve when we work together.
It's a testament to the power of collaboration and what's possible in space exploration. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into the latest happenings on the ISS, I got one more question. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges and rewards of living and working in space?
That's a great question. One that astronauts often think about too.
Mm.
The challenges are real.
Yeah.
Living in a tiny space, limited resources, being exposed to radiation, dealing with the effects of microgravity on your body.
Yeah.
But the rewards, they're equally incredible. The chance to see our planet from a totally unique perspective, to be part of groundbreaking research, to contribute to human knowledge in a way few people ever will.
It's a testament to the human spirit, our ability to overcome challenges and our desire to explore, and these are the stories that inspire us to keep reaching for the stars.
They are. And as we look to the future of space exploration, it's important to remember what we've learned from the International Space Station. The importance of working together, the power of scientific curiosity, and the limitless potential of the human spirit. These are the things that will guide us as we continue to explore the cosmos.
It's been an amazing journey learning about everything that's happening on the ISS. It leaves you with a sense of wonder and excitement for what the future holds.
Totally. Who knows what amazing discoveries and advancements are out there waiting for us?
Well, on that note, we're coming to the end of our deep dive into the International Space Station. But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Ooh, I like this. What do you have in mind?
Imagine you had the chance to spend a day on the space station. What would you be most excited about? The incredible views of Earth, floating in weightlessness, or maybe getting to participate in one of the experiments?
That's a tough one. It's hard to choose. I mean, seeing Earth from space, like actually seeing it with your own eyes, that has to be incredible. That overview effect they talk about,
Yeah.
where you see the planet, our whole planet is this tiny, fragile thing floating in the middle of nowhere, that would change you, I think.
Yeah, you can't really grasp that, I think, until you've seen it. It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? All the things we worry about down here, they just seem to disappear when you see Earth like that.
Absolutely. It's like a reminder that we're all in this together. We need to take care of our planet. But, I'm a bit of a science nerd, so I'd have to say getting to see those experiments up close, that'd be pretty amazing too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Imagine seeing how plants grow differently in microgravity, or being part of an experiment that could lead to, like, a brand new material. It would be mind-blowing. Totally. And thinking about, like, kids hearing these stories, seeing the pictures, the ISS is such a great way to inspire the next generation, show them that, hey, we can do anything if we work together and aim high.
You got it. It's like proof that humans are incredibly inventive and that we're really just at the beginning of our journey into space.
It really feels that way. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the International Space Station, I just wanted to say I've really enjoyed our conversation today. It's been fascinating, and I've learned so much.
Me too. Always a pleasure to talk about space exploration, and especially about all the amazing work happening on the ISS.
Well, on that note, a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the International Space Station. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
And until next time, keep looking up, keep exploring, and keep wondering about what's out there. There's a whole universe waiting to be discovered.